The question often comes up about why we're able to create certain things in our lives and other things seem to just be out of reach. For myself, I've had many examples of this in my life, and over time, it's become more and more clear to me as to what's going on there, why I've been able to create what I have been able to create, and why others things I can't seem to create, despite using the same techniques to try to create both. I'm currently listening to an audiobook called Parallel Universes of Self. In this book, which is by Frederick Dodson, he uses an analogy that kind of sums this up, where he describes a train representing your desires, and you're trying to catch up to this train. The train is moving at various speeds, depending on what the desire is. And if the train is moving too fast for where your beliefs are, you'll never catch it. And you can do one of two things, or a combination of things. You can slow the train down, which is reeling in your desires a little bit, or you can speed up yourself, which is your beliefs. The beliefs catch up to the desires. And I'm going to share a couple of examples from my life where I did a combination of these things. One where I moved my desires much, much closer to where I was, and the other where I kind of met in the middle. So let's say this is me, and I have a belief here. And in this particular case, I'm going to use an example from when I was working a job that was very far away from my house, about 50 miles. I was driving 50 miles in each direction, 100 miles a day. I wasn't making the amount of money that I was hoping to make. I had just took a pay cut because I just relocated to a state where, the average salary for the same work is a little bit less than where I was coming from. And over time, I just, started to get depressed. I started to get a little bit miserable about my situation. So this represents where I was at the time. And let's say this side represents, my wildest dreams of whatever my best work situation would be. Let's say it's a business that earns $1 million a year. So basically, at some point during this time where I was miserable, someone suggested to me, what if you could work from home and also make a little bit more money? And I let that idea rattle around in my head, and I'd say, that feels pretty good. It feels pretty good. I would like that a lot. But I had a belief that no one was going to pay me the amount of money that I was looking for. I only wanted like another $30,000 or so. At the time, I was making about $90,000 a year. But the idea of an extra $30,000 plus working from home, that felt really good to me. It's impossible. I can't do that. That's where my belief was at the time. But this new desire was much closer to me. Let's say that it was about right here in comparison to where my wildest dream desire is. It's much, much closer to me, but still out of reach. So what happened was, after I got miserable enough, after the position I was in got so uncomfortable that I couldn't take it anymore, I started to loosen up on my belief. I started to move my position a little bit. I started to say, well, maybe it's not impossible. Maybe it could happen. Maybe it could happen. So that would be me moving my belief a little bit closer to that desire. So every day I started applying for jobs. I started looking online and started to see what I could find. I started to apply for jobs, and I did this every day. And not only did I do that every day, I used that long commute that I mentioned, hour-long, 50-mile drive in each direction, to do scripting exercises. So for an hour, or at least half the trip, like maybe 30 minutes in each direction, I do these scripting exercises where I talk about my situation as if that was already true. I make $120,000 instead of $90K, and I work from home. So I'm working from home. I would imagine myself working from home. I'd imagine myself making a little bit more money. I'd imagine how much more money that would be in my check. I use take-home pay calculators to imagine what that would be like every couple of weeks, what the difference would be and how much of an impact that would have in my life. And over time, I don't know, it didn't even take that long, maybe a few months, I started to inch closer and closer to being able to believe that, yeah, that is possible. I started getting interviews, which just increased my belief. And eventually, not only did I find something, it exceeded what I had even imagined. Not only did I work from home, I made an extra, I forgot what the difference was. I was making 90 before, so I ended up making 135K. So a difference of $45,000 a year, which is pretty significant. That's like a 40% pay increase. And this is just a perfect example of what I'm talking about. So I slowed the train down quite a bit, and I moved my beliefs just a bit to get closer to that, because it was still a gap, because my initial belief was that's impossible, and I went from that's impossible to maybe it is possible. And as I started to do these exercises, my belief just crept up just enough, and it was still in the same field. I was still doing the same type of work, so it wasn't that hard of a stretch just imagining what I would be doing. It's not like I imagined a career change. I was still in IT. I just had to allow myself just enough room to believe I can make a little bit more money. I can work from home, which was actually a bigger leap in my mind than the little bit more money. I've done that before. But this was my first work from home job. So that's one example of how you can do that. There was another situation where I had to move my beliefs quite a bit more. And this actually started a long time ago. This is when I first got introduced to the concept of creating your own reality and manifestation in general. And it all started when I went through a breakup. This was about 15 years ago. And I went through this breakup and I felt really sad because I grew up with very low self-esteem in the first place, and my self-image when it came to like my relationship with women or talking to girls or whatever in general was very poor. So when this breakup happened, it was really hard on me. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was still living with my parents at the time. I just didn't know what I was going to do. I could never have love again. That's the position I was in. I mean, it seems ridiculous now looking back on it, but so I started doing whatever I can do to try to figure out how to get out of the situation after the initial shock of it all. The first thing I decided was I'm going to move out of my parents' house, which automatically moved my belief about what's possible in that area just a little bit. Then I started looking into like coaches, and I found all kinds of people online. There's no shortage of dating coaches online. I actually came across a guy named Brent Smith, and Brent had a YouTube channel at the time, which I think most of his videos have been taken down, where he talked about changing your story. And what I started doing is I would watch Brent's videos every day for like hours. And he talked about concepts that were just completely different than what I had in my mind about women and how to attract them. And he talked about attracting women to you instead of chasing them, which even the idea of chasing them seemed far out for me. I was kind of antisocial. The idea of walking up to a woman and talking to her was terrifying to me. He talked about it like, oh, not only can you do that, but you can have women coming after you. And after watching these videos for a long time, I started to talk like him. I started speaking like him. I started repeating the things that he was saying in his videos. And that was slowly moving my belief up and up and up. And if this far end right here represented being like Brent, I also moved this target just to something more along the lines of someone could love me. Women can love me. I can attract people into my life. I can attract women into my life. I can have someone who loves me. So I kind of moved the goalposts. Closer to me, but I still had a long way to go. And over time, this took a long time. I went to coaching programs. I actually spent time at a guy named David Weigett's house. He was a dating coach. I'm not sure if he still is, but the movie Hitch with starring Will Smith was actually loosely based on his life. I've been to his house. I was with all these other guys who were looking for the same thing, and I spent the weekend there. And during that time, my belief moved just a little bit, And another thing I was doing at this time was I was making it a point to put myself in social situations where I was getting more and more opportunities to talk to not just women, but people in general. I was antisocial, so it wasn't just a women thing. And I was hanging out with people who were very social, like social butterflies, and it kept putting me in these uncomfortable situations. And every time I did that, I just got a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more comfortable, a little bit more comfortable. And this took place over the course of years, like 4 or 5 years. But eventually I did get to a point where I had gotten to believe that I could have this. And I got to a point where I was, I'm satisfied where I was. I had completely forgotten that this was a problem in the first place. I looked back on where I came from, and it was like I was a completely different person, which I was a completely different person. It's very obvious looking back on this now. If there's areas in your life that seem to elude you, but you're able to attract other things in your life, and you just can't seem to figure out why, this is probably why. You probably are holding on to a belief, like you have a belief about something, but you want something that's way out there. Like you're reaching back, holding on to the thing that you don't want to let go of, but you're also reaching out, trying to grab something that's out of your reach based on where this belief is that you're holding on to. And you just might need to let that go, or just move the needle just a little bit to be able to reach out to it. Or maybe you need to reel your desire in a bit. And I take this approach now to pretty much anything that I want. Like even now, earlier today, I was doing a meditation, and I'm trying to focus on the feeling of the wish fulfilled, as Neville would call it. And I realized that there's a point where you go and you're trying to reach for something, and your mind or your ego just shuts it off. It just shuts down. It will not let you get into that feeling because you're holding on to an idea that is just incompatible with that belief, with that desire. So what I did was I just reel it back a little bit, try to find something that still feels really good, but is not that far from where your beliefs are. And that's been very helpful for me. A while back, I ran across a series of books from a guy named Greg Kuhn, I think his name was. And he wrote a series of books that all start with Why Quantum Physicists. And he describes like this little game where you're basically trying to ease your beliefs slowly. And at the time, I just completely rejected it because I'm like, I don't want to take this easy. I should be able to create whatever I want. There's no thing that's off limits to me. So why should I have to slow play this? But in reality, for me, at least, and a lot of other people, it was actually a really good idea. I just kind of didn't even give it a chance because I thought it was very limiting. I thought the perspective was just limiting in general. But if you've had this experience in your life where you're trying to figure out why can't I get this thing, but I can get this other thing, I encourage you to give this a chance. Maybe you need to reel your desires in a little bit. Maybe you need to just give your beliefs just a little bit of a nudge and see how much further you can reach. See how much that thing that's right out there, see how good that feels. Does that feel good? If so, work with that. And then when you get there, you can just move the needle a little bit more. That's my message for you today. You can check out the book, Parallel Universes of Self. They describe it. It's a great book. I've been listening to the audiobook of it. Give that a shot. If something in your life seems to be eluding you, see if you can't reel it in a bit to a point that still feels good, but is closer to your reach. Hope you enjoyed this. Hope this has been helpful. Thanks for watching.